I'm so happy that you're all here. We have a very special guest too. We have Judy Widmer, who is our VP of Academics, is joining us here. And I'm just so touched that she is with us tonight. That's super special. And actually next week, we've got Jana flying in and Dr. Amy is coming. And it feels just like this really incredible event that I'm so thrilled to pieces to be part of with everybody and having us all be together and learning together. So let's see here. All right, once we're all done introducing ourselves on the chat, we're going to not have that black square anymore. So we're going to get started. This is environmental design. And I wanted to do a little bit of pre-work with all of you as the Children's House guides. We've got assistant school leaders and school leaders, but mostly this is geared towards Children's House guides. We have people with various levels of training. Some people are in training. Some people have been trained for years and years. Some people are freshly graduated. So we are going to have some things that are going to feel like I already know that, right? You already know this, you already know that. But I know that everybody is going to have something that they'll take away from this. And I wanted to give it to you ahead of time, not just the day before our time at the Plymouth Community Center next week, so that you would have time to process and think about it and not feel like, oh gosh, now on that Friday, I just have 4.5 hours. How am I going to even process this? I wanted to give it to you the week before so you could think about it. And maybe you don't make any changes. Maybe you change everything. Who knows? It's up to you. I trust you and I want to inspire you. Trust and inspire, that's our motto. And so I want to give you a lot of good ideas and information. And like I said, some will be new and some will be old and everything in between. So let's see, we've got a little agenda here. So we'll talk about the Casa dei Bambini. Casa dei Bambini means children's house in Italian. That's where we got our name. That's where Children's House comes from, is because this is an Italian method originally, and now it is international all over the world in almost every country. We're going to talk about shelves, tables, practical life, sensorial language and math, and then an independence check-in. That's sort of the rough outline of what we're going to talk about tonight. So I feel like when I was putting this slide together, you know, if you've ever been to any sort of social protest, you hear people say, whose streets are streets? Whose streets are streets? And I think about the children saying, whose house, our house? Whose house, our house? That's the children. And when we talk about preparation, it talks about things putting things into readiness to provide what is necessary. It's in correlation with arrangement, provision. It has to do with substructure, base, and foundation. We know the environment is a teacher, right? That is a deep, deep part of the philosophy, is that the environment teaches. And so what we do in Montessori all feeds into that notion that the environment is a teacher. We want to think about safety. We want it to be home-like. We really want to work on that in our schools, making it feel like a home away from home. The children spend more waking hours with us than they do in their own homes. We want it to support work, right? So we are here to give them opportunities to interact with their environment, and that is their work. We want it to be beautiful. So even more than just home-like, we want it to be truly beautiful. A place where you walk into and think, like this is beautiful, right? We want there to be order. We know that children from 0 to 6 have a deep need for order. It gives them comfort. It gives them security. It allows them to explore when they know where something's going to be when they need it. It lets them explore all those things instead of having to worry, will I find this thing? Will it be available to me when I need it? A Casa dei Bambini, an environment of protection, just as so many exist in nature. What, for instance, are the beehive, the bird's nest, the anthill, the placenta of the mammal, but just such carefully prepared environments to provide in advance, I love that part, the in advance, for the needs of the developing young. That is from a book called Maria Montessori, Her Life and Work. And if you haven't ever had access to that book before, I really love it. That is your screen looking blurry? Does it look blurry to you? It does. Interesting. I wonder why. It's not blurry to me, but I don't know why it's blurry to you. I'm so sorry about that. Maybe it won't stay that way as we go through. Gosh. I'm very sorry that it's doing that. I don't know if anybody has, you know what, why don't I try to stop my share and share it without the special provisions right now. And then when it's time for a video, I will try that again. Now let's see what happens. There we go. That's nice and clear, isn't it? I just want you to have the sound when it comes time for our videos. Okay, so first I just want to give you a message of love and gratitude. I want you to know that I see you. I see all of you, those of you that are fresh graduates from Montessori training, and those of you that are currently in training, those of you that have been doing this work for so very long that you now have your own child is working in our schools. And I know that we have the child of one of our other staff. We have Julia on the call. Her mother works in one of our schools, and we have the mother, Christy, who works in one of our schools, whose daughter works also in her school. And that is just really super special. So I just wanted to acknowledge that for a quick moment. But I know that systems and layouts of your classrooms are products of a lot of time and thought and care. And I hope that this presentation will give you some inspiration, some ideas, and even further ignite the passion that you have for Montessori that brought you to this work in the first place. You are so very deeply appreciated, and I hope you enjoy this presentation. So before we start our trainings, and we'll talk about this at the Professional Development Day, you know, our mindsets shape our ability to absorb new ideas. We might have heard of fixed growth or fixed mindset and growth mindset, right? And we flow in and out of these mindsets every day in our life, right? So fixed mindset might include resisting possibility of growth and change, focused on preserving what is familiar, thinking I will lose something if things change, and that challenges are uncomfortable and we want to avoid them. But we work hard as adults and as constantly learning humans to switch into growth mindset. That means showing up with an open mind to learn and improve. We want to focus on growth through deliberate effort. We want to grow through a process of incremental change and have an enthusiasm for trying new things. And, you know, a couple months ago, Jana signed me up, and I'm so grateful that she did, for this Montessori Coaches course. And I was introduced to this new concept of benefit mindset. That includes showing up with an open heart as well as an open mind to serve the well-being of all, focusing on who we are being and why we do what we do. The why. We talk a lot about the why at Endeavor. So being of benefit by being the transformation and acknowledging that the work we are doing is serving something greater than ourselves, right? And that just pairs so well with education, because we clearly are doing something that's greater than ourselves, right? We are helping shape the future, and that is not to be taken lightly. It's really a wonderful opportunity and responsibility. So intention, Montessori environments are uniquely designed to support children's natural development through fostering independence, a sense of order, refinement of movement, and concentration. Furniture and materials are selected to create a space that is beautiful, home-like, reflective of the cultures of the community. And again, remember that children are often with us more waking hours than they're in their own homes. So if you've had a chance to take the academic orientation, if you haven't yet, I hope that everybody will. If you're a Children's House Guide and you're trained and all of those things, you might think, oh, what do I need to take it? It really would be helpful if you do, because I would love for you to see what I'm showing all the new staff and what I'm showing the support staff, so that you can refer back to it as a point of reference. So please do take the time to take the academic orientation. But what I really want is the biggest takeaway is that Montessori is a child-centered pedagogy. So it's super easy to say that, but what does it really mean? Often, and let's just be real, it takes more adult time, more adult effort. It's often more expensive and less convenient. Let's just be real about it. And this is the thing. Often Montessorians consciously decide to remove the shortcuts for ourselves in order to serve the child at their particular point in development. And one example is, we are moving back to reusable plates at our schools. But oftentimes in Montessori schools that are using glass plates, and they really want to show the child how to set the table with glass plates one at a time. And we know as adults that we can carry a stack of glass plates and we won't drop them, right? But we need to stop and show the child to carry one at a time. And I was actually just speaking with Amanda Joynes the other day, who was the former head of school or school leader at Maple Grove Step by Step. And she was saying that she didn't really sort of grasp that concept until she was in Montessori training. And she remembers, a child who really wanted to carry 2 plates at a time. And she said to that child, remember, we really want to carry just one at a time. And the child said, excuse me, no, Miss Amanda, I can carry 2 plates. And unfortunately or fortunately, that child did drop the plates and they both broke. And that was actually an okay thing to have happened, because the child then, they, of course, had the big eyes and they were worried about it. And Miss Amanda said, that is okay. That is okay. And then the next time that child saw another child carrying 2 plates, she ran across the room and said, no, we carry 1 plate at a time. But we have to model that for children, even though we know we can carry a lot of things at a time. And remember that children are always watching with that beautiful, absorbent mind. So we have 80 classrooms in our region. 36 of them are children's houses, if you can believe it, and they are all different. So this presentation is going to land differently on you depending on what you have or don't have or how your room is laid out. So I'm just going to take a quick second because I want you to think about your environment. What is your carpet to tile ratio? Do you have direct access or sideways outdoor access or no outdoor access? Do you have a water source or no water source? Do you have complete walls, half walls, or no walls? Do you have complete control over the traffic in your room, or people are always walking through to get somewhere else? I can think of a number of classrooms like that. I love you, St. Anthony. You're my, I really appreciate you. And that they're not the only room that has that, but I just wanted to give them a special shout out because they deal with a lot of traffic through their classrooms. Do you store the cots in your classroom, or are they stored elsewhere? Do you have a 1 or 2 or even 0 walls with windows? Again, my dear friends at St. Anthony, there's a classroom with no windows. Are you licensed for 20 or 30 or 40? Do you have bathrooms or no bathrooms in your classroom? Do you have windows that open for fresh air? Or most of us don't have windows. We have windows, but they don't open at all. So there's no fresh air coming in. Lofts or no lofts? Do you have a completely open floor plan or unusual nooks and crannies? Do you have your cubbies for the children's belongings inside the room or outside the room? And we all have different amounts and styles of storage. So all of these things, I just want to say again, I recognize how every room is so different. So things are going to be different depending on all of those things. And just a quick run through, because most of folks understand this very well. Placement of shelves is used to map and structure the room, creating designated areas for practical life, sensorial, language, math, culture, and then other areas like a reading nook, a rest and peace area, mudroom, and a collective space. But I want you to feel really empowered to get creative. Children feel comforted by cozy spaces to work, eat, rest, and gather as a community. Include a variety of L-shaped and U-shaped shelf configurations throughout. Arrange, feel empowered to pull those shelves away from the walls and create all kinds of spaces, interesting spaces throughout your classroom. Arrange shelves smartly to avoid running tracks. Furniture placement, along with strategically placed adult chairs for observation, supports refinement of movement, safety, and allows for proper supervision. So this is actually Sunny Hollow. This is the school I was in previous to Endeavor. I was there for 9 years, and this is one of their children's houses. And I want you to feel empowered that it doesn't all have to be at right angles, right? These little angular angles are kind of fun. They just create a really dynamic living type of space. And then, the plants are just fantastic. This is in Corcoran. So as we're replacing shelves, we want to, many of our classrooms have a bunch of the exact same kind of shelf. And as we're replacing shelves, we want to introduce shelves with different styles, backs versus no backs, different lengths, different heights. It's allowing us to play Tetris, if you will, with more than just one kind of game piece. So it's okay to have a combo of closed and open backs. They can be placed against each other, against the walls, or have a table at the back of them. It creates this open, airy feeling, and having different styles allows you to build a dynamic, interesting space. So I just love the way that this is Miss Page's room, I believe, right, Brenda, that she set this up in her snack, which is just really so lovely looking. Shelf notes. So shelves do feel crowded when there's not enough of them, but often there's space for more shelves with a room redesign, and we'll talk about that. Shelves can tend to feel crowded if there's too many extras. So this isn't new, my friends. I've been talking to us about these for a very long time. These are materials that I would love to not include in our environments anymore, because they really take away from the discovery and the learning for the child. Worksheets, cartoony coloring sheets, this material down in the corner, this blue plastic thing, these puzzles and the patterns, it takes away, you want to really think about what is the purpose and the intent of the material. And when we think about the pink tower, the brown stair, the colored cylinders or the knobless cylinders, the intention of that work, discrimination of dimension, that is taken away when we give the children these templates to use. We want them to use their sensorial abilities to figure out how to grade our knobless cylinders or a pink tower or our brown stairs. Another thing that makes our shelves feel pretty crowded is that if we don't have enough levels. So Children's House shelves generally should have four levels, a bottom, a top, and two middle. And otherwise, sometimes we just don't have enough space to house all of our materials because we're missing an entire tier. And for those of you that have only 3 tiers, I'm working on getting new shelves for you. So we'll be working on that. Just back to the coloring sheets for a quick second. You know, we really want to give them a lot of opportunities, primarily opportunities with blank paper, so that they really can go through these stages of scribbling so that they can define those fine motor skills and work on being writers and defining their art expression. You know, there is a place for coloring sheets, but I urge you to really choose some quality ones, right? So non-cartoony coloring sheets are sparingly used, especially for aftercare. I really wouldn't include them in the work cycle because they can be so enticing to children because of the novelty of them and the constant rotation of them, that they don't engage with the materials that we need them to engage with that are actually suiting a higher purpose. So if we could save coloring sheets for after school or before school, and then also make them more quality. And then these are my albums. This is actually a picture from my living room here. Keeping your albums on hand is really important because you'll need to go through them regularly to make sure that your shelves are in order and that you don't have a lot of supplemental materials. You use them constantly to refresh yourself on the steps of presentations. Every time I read a presentation right out of my album, I'm reminded of tiny little details that make those materials so special. The intention, the direct aim, and the indirect aim of all these materials are so brilliantly laid out that it's almost impossible to hold them all in our heads all the time. So please take the time to refresh yourselves on your albums. And I'll show you, if you don't feel like you have space in your classrooms, I actually printed all of mine out at a quarter size. This is when I was right after training. I went to teach in Japan for 2 years, and it was really hard for me to imagine shipping those huge binders. So I printed them all small. This is language, here's math, but everything is just sort of if you can see this, there we go. A quarter or a half size or a quarter size. And then I just had them bound at Kinko's. And they're really, really small and handy to have. But finding space for your albums, whether they're large or small, is really important to keep in the room and constantly refer to. This shelf here is off of Google Images. This isn't one of our classrooms, but about 2/3 of the materials on the shelf would be plenty. So we really don't need to overcrowd our shelves. And when we think about the height of the shelves, it should be about the average height of your student, creating little classrooms. So as they're in an L shape or a U shape, they should be able to sit down at a working mat or a chowkey in that little nook and feel like they're in their own little classroom, right? It can make a large classroom feel like their own little world. And that is really a wonderful way to encourage concentration and independence. You know, sometimes a very low shelf will be used for something particular, like a classroom pet or the red rods. Children have the opportunity to reach up and bend down. Sometimes if our shelves are too tall and yes, Taylor, I'm saying that this shelf is too crowded. Thank you for clarifying, yes. You know, we could use the top shelf for plants or pictures. We don't have to put materials up there if it's something that younger children are accessing regularly. And then a pro tip that I learned is when you're setting up your shelves, you know, these shelves are removable and movable many times. You could remove one of the shelves from one of your sensorial shelves so you have space for your botany and your geometry cabinets, and use that extra shelf in your math shelf where you're laying out all of your strip boards and your math charts, because they're so flat. And then you can have 5 shelves on that to lay out all of those, because we know how much space all those charts take up, and how much space our geometry cabinets need. So I'm going to take you on a little journey through Wood Park Montessori School in Savage. This was last January. I had the supreme joy of setting up a classroom from absolute beginning, complete beginning. You can see what it looked like before. There was the boxes, there was garbage, there was old shelves, there was all kinds of things. And this room had been under construction for about a year. And I really, you can see all that cardboard there. That was all the boxes that stack was actually taller than I was. But it was such a fun thing to do. And I just want to take you through how I decided the way to do it. And the videos that I've taken it's about 80% complete. So it was not, by any stretch the full, and so if the video is running, I might just narrate it myself so that we don't have to do the whole sharing the other way and have it be blurry. So this is kind of a 360 overview from the entrance of that room. There's individual or 2-person tables, practical life area. And this is sort of an overview of the whole classroom. Very calming, peaceful, ambient lighting, child-sized sink, and the bathrooms. Such a wonderful room. Trash yet to be taken out. I made these videos not really knowing how I was going to be using them. So yes, that is Miss Zuleka's room in Wood Park Savage, and it's just absolutely wonderful. And we'll return to those videos throughout this whole thing. So tables, children have the freedom to choose whether to work individually or near other children. That is a freedom that we grant to all the children. So we really want to create an assortment of workspaces. So we want the tables to be scattered throughout the room near the materials. Avoid clustering them in one area. So tables placed against a wall or the back of a shelf create an opportunity for individual work. And, we want to leave floor spaces throughout the room for children to make use of chowkeys or work mats to exercise their freedom of where or with whom to work. So when you walk in and all the tables are right there when you first walk in, it doesn't allow for that freedom that we should give children to be able to work independently. They're working very clustered together. And if there's a very large open space for gathering, that is where you end up with a cluster of working mats, and it really does take away from that opportunity to work independently. So we want to just kind of keep that in mind as we go through. So shelves and tables as the structure of the room. So all the chairs, shelves, and tables are spread throughout the environment, supporting the first plane children's work. First plane meaning 0 to 6. In this case, 3 to 6. We want to allow for many individual workspaces for concentrated work, as opposed to a cluster of tables upon entering, and then a large gathering space like we just talked about that fills with a cluster of work rugs during the work time. We want to bring the workspaces closer to the materials. We want to make space for the number of shelves that are needed for a full set of materials. I have a lot of friends that say, oh, I don't have these materials, but gosh, I just don't know where I would put any more shelves. If we do a redesign, if we redesign and restructure the way our shelves are, and I'm thinking to all of our rooms, there's no room too small to house all of our shelves in our region. I promise you, I can help. And making space for, like I said, making space for the number of shelves needed for materials, encouraging refinement of movement as children navigate the space, right? We want them to have little tight areas to go through. We want them to have that opportunity to refine their movement as they navigate the space. And it allows children the freedom to work independently, and that freedom cannot be exercised when the majority of tables are clustered at the entrance. So let's think about how we might spread out. So here's some examples of tables spread out throughout the room. And you can see work rugs, work mats are spread out throughout the room too. There's not like one area where they're all concentrated. This is just one example. Here's another example. This is not in one of our schools. This is a huge space. This is obviously like, not a terrible lot of refinement movement happening here. So this room is a little too large, actually, in my opinion, but we want to see how the tables are spread out throughout. Okay, now we're back in Zuleka's room. And even this gathering space could be a little bit smaller. We can teach children how to sit in a cluster. So the tables are spread out. And I just walk through a little bit. And it is convenient, of course, for adults to set up and clean up lunch when they're all clustered together. But again, remember what we said in the beginning about you know, it does make a little more work for us, but we're serving the children, right? So we have individual workspaces. There's one, there's another. I mean, look at what a lovely place to work. I want to sit at that table like all day long. This is before the art was even hung on the shelves. I mean, it's just wonderful. So there's one adult chair, two adult chairs, and then the third adult chair is way over by the bathroom. Important to spread out the tables. And the adults should be sitting a lot of the time. If you find yourself constantly putting out fires, you want to just sit down and observe. My trainer always said, you know, if you just don't know what to do, just sit down, just have a seat and see what's going on. So I have all these little hot tips for you throughout. So this is going to be new for some of our classrooms, and having lunch throughout the room. I understand the trepidation if you haven't done this before, but let's definitely talk about it. Remember, we want to allow the opportunity for the environment and the children themselves to be the teacher that facilitates independence and peace during the work cycle. When we set up the room and we prioritize ease of nap and lunch and gathering time accommodated over concentration during the work time, you know, we as adults end up spending a lot of time training children how to work so closely together without being distracted. When we have our workspaces set apart, and then in turn lunch is spread apart too, we bring in extra chairs for lunch, you know, because at the work cycle, we wouldn't have this many chairs at each table. We'd have one, maybe two, but that's when the extra chairs come out. And look, they have the exact same chairs that we do that we've gotten from our grants. So that's kind of fun, and tables as well. So again, hot tip, lunch throughout the room. Most rooms are not entirely tile, but it is okay. It really is okay to allow children to eat at tables or chowkees on the carpet floor. I know that this is really new for a lot of folks, but in fact, some of our schools have no choice because their tile floor is so small. So they've been eating on the carpet for a long time. But there's a lot of tricks to it, right? So knowing your children, and put the ones that have more experience feeding themselves lunch out in the carpet area. You know, you still want to have that mentorship, so older children with younger children, but you know your children well. If you have a toddler that just moved up, they obviously, you'd want them to eat on the tile floor, so it's a little easier. But as they grow and as they become the mentors to the younger ones, we can spread them out. And really take the time, invest the time to show children how to clean up after themselves. By taking that time, when the adult is ready to clean up, do the final cleanups, there really will be very little left to do. But we have to invest the time in the children to show them how to eat without making a huge mess, and how to clean up after themselves. And that is a skill that they need. This is just as important as the work cycle, truly, is for them to learn how to have that care of self and care of the environment. And just like lunch, we can do nap throughout the room. So we don't need to have all the cots bundled together in one spot. They can be spread out. But again, you know your children really well. Know which children will fall asleep easily on their own, and they can be out in the nether regions, right? And then, you know, the children who need a little extra support, you'll keep them close to you. And, you know, one of the things that's beautiful, some of you nap in the room, some of you don't nap in the room, but for those of you that do nap in the room, you can invite the children who stay up to sit next to a child that could use that support. Remember, we do not want to have children who are awake laying on their cot for more than half an hour. So if you have children who are resting, and even if you have older children who don't even really need a rest, but they just need a calming moment, have them sit next to one of your younger friends and rub their back to sleep, you know, or just sit there with a hand on their back. That's part of nurturing each other, part of being part of a community. And cot sheets. So if your school hasn't started already, we'll be using cot sheets to support the goals of making environments home-like. And yes, that will mean more laundry for us. Again, these are the things that we do in order to serve the children. And I promise you we can figure out systems. So then, okay, so our rooms are the tables are spread out, the shelves are spread out, but when the rooms are full of these lovely nooks and corners, and the children are busily working, some on the floor, some at tables, some close, some far, and an adult is on the floor giving a presentation, how can we properly supervise? And this is something I get from Jana. You know, she's from the South, so she says a lot of cute things that I just love to use. It says, we give it the old one up, one down. Having one adult up, that's with open eyes, moving about, observing, prepping materials, sitting on an adult chair. This will allow for concentrated presentations and proper supervision. And then adult chairs. And I love these vintage photos of Dr. Montessori. There she is in her adult chair, observing. She's just observing. An adult chair for each adult strategically placed throughout the room. The lead guide has a place for record keeping and lesson planning, notebooks, and binders near their chair. So that is really important. And if you need more adult chairs, we can easily get them. I've got some beautiful ones from Goodwill. You know, it really is important that there's an adult chair for every adult. So we move on to practical life. And if possible, practical life is the area that the child walks into upon entering the room. The practical life activities are familiar and comforting to the child, and the area where they will first connect with materials, right? As they enter as a brand new child or as a toddler moving up. The child is moving from an inward focus, constructing themselves only, to focusing into the ways in which they participate in the community. So we want to situate it on the tile floor as opposed to the carpet if possible. And then consider where, if any, there's a water source to use, as many practical life activities require water and wet cleanup. And if you don't have a water source, we've gotten pretty creative in figuring out ways to bring water into the rooms. But I do know that that remains to be a challenge in some of our classrooms, and we'll continue to work on it. So snack and water are made to be available in this area. So individual snack, we're done with group snack. This is something that should be provided for the children that they can access anytime throughout the work cycle. While tables across the room are varying in sizes, there's a slight concentration of smaller tables here, since the young children will often spend more time in this area as they're acclimating. So here we go back to Mrs. Lecca's room again. There's little post-it notes where I haven't had those materials yet set up, but this is the introductory shelf. So these are the things that children can do without a presentation. So things that they can just access on their own, open and close, nuts and bolts, rubber bands on a pegboard, puzzles, clothespins, lacing cards, things like that are preparation for other works later on. And then there'll be puzzles more on the bottom shelves. And then a workspace for them to keep their work that they're working on, work in progress, or work that's going home. And then their entryway is a little bit inside. So all of those, that's where the children hang their things. Extra chairs that we bring out during lunch are stored right there, which is a perfect spot, because then they can sit down and then change their shoes for their inside shoes. And a hot tip is to add a dustpan and brush with a small trash can to the mudroom, so that they can sweep up if they have sand or wood chips or things like that in their shoes. But they should have everything they need to be independent right there in the mudroom. Oh, and this I get from Janet too. I was like, Legos? Legos, what do you mean? Yes, Legos on the introductory shelf. So children have a deep desire to create and build. Well, a big bucket, because I was thinking big bucket of Legos. I'm like, I don't want a big bucket of Legos. But while a big bucket of Legos is appropriate for after school, there are ways to make them useful as an individual activity on the introductory shelf. So a single dish with a single color, or a couple soft colors that can be sorted into 2 pretty dishes on a nice tray, along with an oilcloth to define the space, helps for building, helps the child to keep them together, and they can really be beautiful. And I don't know if you see this little thing right here. I got this from my son's. He's 16 now. He hasn't touched these since he was like a long time ago. That's a little cat. I don't know if you can see the legs and the tail. Still a cat from when Nico built it when he was little. And then we move into practical life. We have transferring shelf. And, you know, there's a lot of transferring skills right here of different, everything should be its own skill, right? We don't want to have duplicates. We want to have something that provides a different skill, a special type of spoon that's very narrow, pouring into 3 cups. When we have waterworks, we provide an oilcloth and an apron, a sponge, a way to clean up after themselves. Pouring pitcher to pitcher, and then whisking up our soapy suds so that they are ready for food work when they get to baking. Now we want to talk about rotating materials for a second. So many Montessori guides regularly rotate materials on the transferring shelf. This is fun, and we love switching things out based on holidays and seasons, etc. But we see the renewed interest that the children have in the materials. But I really want to urge you instead to focus on rotating other materials. So we want children to move away from transferring. We don't want to keep drawing them back to that because they've already mastered that skill. So we want them to apply those skills to more sophisticated work with sequence and logic. And be sure it's the skill and not the novelty that's attracting them. So you can see in the first picture, we have green lentils. And then we move to red lentils. And then we move to brown lentils. Is the skill changing? No, but are the children going to be drawn back to it because it's something new and different? Yes. And that's really taking their focus away from being able to move on to things that are, more challenging and really serving that developmental need. So I've seen, little hearts or little pumpkins or little shamrocks or little snowflakes, all those things. We really don't need to spend time rotating, transferring work. What we would really love to do to really keep encouraging them is to change out other works. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So instead, be selective and sparingly use that tool, because it's a tool that we can use of rotation to spark interest in work that you've noticed the children really need more enticement to practice, but they need more practice, right? They need to practice table washing so they have that movement down when they're ready for writing. They need to practice their pincer grip practice. So for example, on your metal insets, you could have a tray of white paper and then a tray of one color of colored paper, because metal insets on colored paper is a very valid thing to do. Make sure you're using copy paper and not construction paper. It just takes the pencil more. But I would put one color out, and then all of a sudden one day, oh, that pink paper is now blue. And it brings children back to it and they get excited about it again. But it wasn't something that you have to represent the entire thing. It's just one tiny change. And if you watch Simi Abdullah's rotating your materials webinar, that idea of just changing one thing out to bring enticement back to a skill that they really need to do, right? That they really need to practice. That is an incredible way to use that tool of novelty to bring them back. In 20 years of guiding a children's house, it never occurred to me to rotate my table washing. Even just changing one bowl will renew the child's interest in something that they need to practice. I don't know about you, but my mind was blown when I saw that. I thought, wow. And look at this. What if one day we had the ceramic pitcher and everything out, and a month and a half later, we had a metal set? Oh my gosh, the children will be so excited to use that again. But they won't need an entire new presentation. They know how to do it already. And this is a way to get them back into the work without having to present it all again. So now we're back in care of self and food work. We have napkin folding here. And again, this is Miss Udleka's room. When I first set it up, we just had apple slicing here. That's all we had at the moment. Hopefully there's and I think last time I was there, I saw lots of different food works there, because I would love so much if we made this the year that we dive into food work, guys, that we do things like making guacamole, making our own butter and spreading it, scrubbing and peeling carrots and slicing them, juicing oranges and juicing clementines and juicing lemons and limes. If you aren't, concerned about egg allergies in your room, how to peel an egg, how to slice an egg. I mean, these are skills that the children will have for the rest of their lives. Grinding spices, that's the sensorial effects of that are so powerful. It's amazing. And so then we have a plant care at the top, and then I went into polishing after that. And then I kind of hybridized this shelf. The bottom two shelves were going to be sewing works. I'm not sure if Miss Udleka was able to put together more sewing works, but I would love for us to really, along with this being the year of the food work, this could be the year of our sewing work. Really trust and believe in the children that they can do sewing. I promise you they can. Then we're on the art shelf. So we have, I wanted a smaller container for that black crayon, but black crayon on white paper, white crayon on black paper, colored pencils on black or white paper. So it's really cool for them to see the different effects. These cloths are just for cleaning up art. Those are gray. And then on the far shelf, we see the blue ones. Those are for cleaning up water and soapy kinds of spills. But back here, we're going to have cutting work, and that's something that we're going to, 3 trays with 3 little scissors. Snipping patterns, we're going to be making those at Professional Development Day. We have watercolor painting, so we have an art mat and an apron. And then we have the color mixing down below with the apron and the oilcloth as well. And they're not set up yet, but there'll be a red, a yellow, and a blue. And then in the teacher cabinet, you can have just a reusable, Aquafina bottle that has that already mixed up, so you can easily refill it with that little funnel that's there. So here's a picture, and you might have seen this in your email before. This is one of the things, every Children's House is going to get 2 sheets that I've already printed of these, and you're gonna be able to cut them out and be ready for your cutting work this year. So that's gonna be one of the projects at Material Making Day. And here are so many sewing ideas. So I used to have sewing cards like this where I've had the holes already punched in them. You can have embroidery, you can have, pillow sewing. And do you see these little things down here, these needle holders? I just got them off of Amazon. They look like a lipstick case, but they screw on the tops and you can keep the needle in there. And therefore it's safe. If you feel comfortable having it on the shelf because your children have acclimated, they know that they shouldn't be touching that unless they've had a presentation, or that might be the one thing you keep in the cabinet and they get all the sewing work set up, and then you give them the needle when they're ready. This middle picture is actually my friend Susie's daughter sewing that felt mitten as a toddler. So we really, really can show children how to use sharp things. It's really incredible. So now we're in care of the environment. So I set up these totes for lunch cleanup. They each have a sponge and a spray bottle and a drying cloth. So they can really, this is what I mean about involving them in cleaning up their lunch. There's multiples of them because, a lot of lunchtime has to happen, like cleanup has to happen at once. And so as I'll wait for the video to move over. Then we've got, this was the hand washing station. I think that's already set up. That mirror was going to be hung. All the hand washing materials, and mount the mirror on the wall. And then more care of the environment over here. We have window washing, we have table scrubbing, dustpans and brush. We have our blue cloths for drying up, soapy or wet spills. We have wiping up a spill for the floor. They can put their little cones out to mark a space where there's a wet spill. Here's our cloth washing stand. I got that little table at a thrift shop, and just behind it, there's a laundry basket and the drying cloth or drying rack for hanging our clean, just washed cloths. Okay. Then we have, and I will send this out to you in an email. I just want you to really think about expanding what you've got for your care of self, for your care of environment, for food work, for art, and I can send this out in an email, but there's so many things we can be doing with children. Just a million different things. I love making hummus. So giving them chickpeas out of a can that they can mash with a mortar and pestle, have lemon juice and olive oil in a dropper bottle, a little tiny spoon for a little pinch of salt, and then they can spread it on pita crackers. And oh my goodness, what a lovely thing for them to learn how to do. And think of all the refinement of movement, all of the sequencing, everything that happens when they make their own hummus. Now, walking on the line, this is something that Dr. Montessori observed children everywhere. And if you've ever been out in the world and you've seen children, they're pulling on their adults' hands so that they could walk on curbs, cracks in the pavement, logs, painted lines on the ground. This time, not just for walking upright, because many of them, by the time they get to Children's House, most children can walk, but it's to perfect their equilibrium and their balance. They're reminding us that we are the only species that does not move like their adults within moments of their birth. It takes practice, it takes repetition. So she created this material, this walking on the line, as one of the materials that supports normalization. And that just means finding your inner peace and calm. The center of gravity shifts as a child grows from a top-heavy infant and toddler to a long, lanky child in the Children's House. And that throws off their center of balance. They need to practice. So this line is not used for sitting on or a circle time, as it's a movement material, right? And we're asking children to sit still on it. That would be illogical. So as well, children get bored during circle times and try to peel up the tape. So electrical tape, not stretched. If I stretch the electrical tape too tightly, it does start to peel up. But it really does just peel up anyway. You just have to keep putting it back down. That is just part of that thing that we do as Montessori teachers. Well, something that I saw when I was training last year for MOTEP in Portland was someone had the Velcro, the hook side of the Velcro down, pressed into the carpet. And I just couldn't believe it. I thought that was absolutely brilliant, because remember, you want the children to really feel as they're walking with their socked feet or bare feet. You want them to feel that. So that was a really good way, I thought, of doing that. You want to designate an area for children to line up their shoes and to show how to keep work mats off of the line. It can be large and encircle shelves, as long as it's far enough away from them that those chairs and tables can still be used. The use of drums for rhythm, cotton balls on a spoon, bean bags on their head, carrying a glass of water, etc. Really use that line as an opportunity for refinement of movement. Show children how to walk heel to toe with a light skip, stopping and starting. I mean, oftentimes when I was a children's house guide and the room was just kind of a little bit too energetic for my taste, I would just start walking really slowly on the line. And before I knew it, children would fall in line behind me and it would just calm the whole room down. It was absolutely brilliant. So please try to find a way to have walking on the line in your classrooms. It's very, very important. So this room, you can see how the line encircles these tables in the middle. A lot of people might be like, well, I don't have space for a line. You really can find it. And if all else fails, have a wandering line that goes through the room. Of course, having it end to end is best so that it's indefinite, right? But if you really, really can't, then you could have a wandering line that goes through the room. And then we want home-like area rugs. So a lot of our classrooms have these rugs that you see on the left-hand side here. As traditional educational rugs are worn out and ready to be retired, consider a different replacement for area rugs. What type of rugs would you like to have in your own bedroom, right? Seek out calming, beautiful home-like rugs. I mean, this room at the bottom, it just has this tiny little rug and it's just a lovely little blue rug. We just want to sort of, keeping that idea in mind of home-like. Sensorial language and math, these fan out from the practical life as you enter the areas of the room. So where possible, these areas are laid out with similar principles used for materials on the individual shelves, right? Simple to complex, concrete to abstract, left to right, top to bottom. So the progression of the materials is intentional in a Montessori setting. Ensure that the materials are on the shelves according to the sequence in your albums. This is why we really need to keep our albums in the classroom. And here we are back in Miss Uleka's room. So we have the sensorial area, cylinder blocks, and then pink tower, brown stair, and then the red rods. That's the order of those first 4 sensorial materials. And then we stay in the visual sense, right? We have color tablets, binomial, trinomial, geometry cabinet, botany cabinet, and the cards that go with them. And you can see how I took one shelf out and I moved it over to the math shelf, the math area. And then we moved, this shelf is too crowded in my opinion. I put this out because I just wanted to keep my constructed triangles together. That was really important to me. Graded geometric figures, those can be stacked up on each other. Decanomial square, knobless cylinders, our touch boards and our touch tablets, the fabrics, baric tablets, thermic tablets, sound cylinders. I need to make some smelling bottles. We have stereognostic bags. We have more stereognostic bags can be made on numbers 1 through 9. Geometric solids, and then the basket and the bases to be doing the exercises with them. Yeah, I just love brand new Montessori materials. They're just like so beautiful to look at. So hot tip, the red rods and the number rods. If you see up in this corner here, this holder, it is so convenient, right? For space, for holding, for space, right? But consider the purpose of the red rods, which is visual discrimination of length, and the number rods, which is physical representation of quantity, right? Pedagogically, it's very important that these rods be laid out on a shelf so that the absorbent mind can work its magic. It's for the same reason that we don't display our pink tower jumbled in a basket. We want the children to be just absorbing that length discrimination always as they're walking around through their peripheral vision, and they're incredible space savers, of course. However, they visually block the intent of the material, right? So why are these in the Montessori vendor catalogs? Well, at $36 to $67 each, they're quite profitable. But please make space for your rods on the shelves, and they will serve the children just by being their own beautiful selves sitting on the shelf. Then we're back at Ms. Uleka's room in science and language, and there's a lot of materials that needed to be made there. Lots of language cards. Those work mats needed to be put in some sort of working mat holder. We've got the working mats. The puzzle maps still in their plastic. haven't been used yet. You've got their globes. So nice to have the fresh plants and the individual workspaces. Again, tables spread out. Language, we have a whole shelf to fill with beautiful language materials. Our metal insets and our writing. So we've gone from spoken language to writing and then to reading, right? Phonogram sandpaper, regular sandpaper letters, phonogram sandpaper letters, movable alphabets, and then our reading cards. And then detective adjective. Okay, and I'm going to have these on display at the professional development day. We will have, I will show an example of a writing tray of bookmaking work, and we're going to have the opportunity to cut a lot of writing papers and covers for books. So children can make books of strips. They can make books of a quarter sheet that has room for one word and one picture, half sheet that has room for a sentence and a picture, and a full sheet that has several lines and picture to go with their story, and then make books out of them all. And these are the cards that we're going to be making. So I have them right here. I'm super excited about them. We're going to have, I made patterns for you for how to cut these out. Literally, these are so simple to make, and we'll have time to talk about it at the PD day. But I just wanted to show you that inside, I'm not sure if you can see this, there's a little divider. So there is pockets here of for the label, the picture cards, and then the control cards. So the 3-part cards, and they're really, really simple to make. If you have sewing machines, definitely bring them along, borrow them from people, but I will have needles and thread. It's literally 3 lines of stitching. That's it. It's going to be so easy to make. And these are in like a eyeshadow palette display thing. And then we have the matching ones that are just for the spoken language cards. So the exact same pictures, but without the words, right? So we just have the beautiful cards that we're going to make. And I've already printed and laminated tons and tons and tons of sets for you. And we will be making those and probably have time to take some with you, and I might make some more. Oh, and you can see the patterns that I've made there for you. So bringing a cutting mat and a rotary cutter and a straight edge, that all the school leaders should have bought a set for your school. Bring those along. Bring lots and lots of paper cutters. So this classroom, oh my goodness, look at that snow. Can you even believe it? That was in January. And it's like 100 degrees in Minneapolis right now. It's so hot. So they are one of the very fortunate schools to have outdoor access straight from their classroom. Here's the math area. And see numbers 1 through 10 right there. We've got our number rods displayed on the flat shelf there. Teens and tens. Our bead cabinets, our decimal system, golden beads, those are still in their packages. And then we've got our memorization, our charts, and you can see where I've added that extra shelf in there from the geometry cabinet shelf over there. And then a final look. So as we look around, you can still see the mop buckets and things like that. We still need certain materials, but you can see how it's laid out with little nooks and crannies, individual workspaces. The tables are spread out, not all clustered together at the entrance. And what I realized after I set up this entire thing was that I forgot to put in a reading corner. So something had to give after that. I'm sure Ms. Uleka figured it out, but after everything, 3 solid days of unpacking and arranging, I was like, oh, where's the reading corner? So, and that little area there is where they're going to keep their cots because that door wasn't needed. So really beautiful, that classroom. Let's see here. I'm actually just going to go a little bit because we've looked at this several times. I wanted to show that we really don't hang any art on the green part on the top because, again, this is the children's house. That would be too high for them. So everything, this room just has a natural sort of break in the wall where the wainscoting is, right? And everything should be at the children's level. And it's okay to have empty walls like this. What you could do is have some mobiles hanging down with some beautiful, shells or glass or twigs, pine cones, those kinds of things. But you really don't want to fill up all that space because, again, bring the level down. The children are much shorter than we are, right? So one of the things I see sometimes are family photos taped on the walls, because it's so hard to find space for them, right? But what you could do is put them in a photo album. So when children bring photos of their family to the classroom, they can be assembled into a photo album that lives on the shelf as a material. And that way the children can take it to a table or a chowkey and look through the pictures as they like. You want to avoid taping photos onto the walls. Framed photos on tops of shelves, they can really just take up too much space. If you have like 30 children, that's 30 framed photos. That can take up a lot of space. And the trays, you guys, look at all these beautiful trays. So really try to use, and I know that budget is an issue, but we can slowly start to buy different trays of different materials. We want the tray to match the work. That is the size of it, the material, the color coding, what goes together, what is a good weight. You don't want to put very heavy things on a very light tray, or even very light things on a very heavy tray, right? You really want to see how would this be for a child to carry it. There's glass, there's metal, there's wood, there's enamel, there's ceramic, there's melamine, bamboo, painted trays, rope trays, plastic, mirror, glass, wicker, with or without handles, and lots of different kinds of handles. Yes, Sherry says Temu has good quality trays for a reasonable price. That is so true. Temu, go to that website. I mean, of course, you're going to start getting a lot of ads. That's what happened to me, but they have incredible trays for a very good price. And covering bulletin boards. So we're working on removing bulletin boards from our classrooms, but if you still have some, covering them with a simple fabric or burlap is a good way to work towards the goal of having a home-like environment. And it removes the temptation to have to fill them with the cookie cutter art projects, right? It can just be like it's part of the wall. And reusable dishes. So I believe that most of our schools use reusable dishes and snack dishes at one point, and now they're making a triumphant return, my friends. So it's so great for care of the environment, waste reduction, and not only that, but getting them involved. So it's home-like. We're giving dignity to the sharing of a meal. This is in Edina. This is my friends in Edina over there. They are using those reusable glass jars that the Yoplait yogurt comes in for their drinking cups. They were all donated or collected from the children's lunches over some time. But we want to involve the children in setting up for the meal. This can be part of the work cycle. There are metal cups, these are the snack plates we have in St. Anthony, and I believe in Wayzata as well. They're just a lovely size, and they're not plastic. They're actually made from that pressed wheat. And these are the first steps to the beautiful meal. So the reusable dishes, moving away from the styrofoam and the paper plates and the plastic cups and all of those plastic cutlery. And oh my goodness gracious. Okay, so this is in Edina. Not only is this school using reusable dishes, and not only are the children washing them, but they're washing them outside, my friends, with curious, happy onlookers. And then look at this photo. Check out this vintage Montessori photo from 100 years ago. And note the curious, happy onlookers right above. Children's development has not changed. They are still learning in the exact same way they did 100 years ago. And people say, like, how can Montessori be brought into the new millennium? The children are the same. They still need the same things, my friends. So this is like, my heart melts when I see these two things side by side like this. It's so super exciting to me. And then pets, hashtag pets of endeavor, right? So rabbits, birds, fish, bearded dragon. That bearded dragon in the middle actually belonged to my nephew. His name is Benny. He now lives at Wood Park, Burnsville. Guinea pigs, snails, hermit crabs, and an axolotl, to name just a few. It is so important to give children the opportunity to nurture living things. Sea mammals, birds, fish, amphibians, and reptiles, IRL, in real life, my friends, and to be able to give them the opportunity to understand the interconnectedness of all living things. If you're curious about how pets could work in your environment and you don't have them yet, please reach out to me. It really is such an important part. And then plants. So having plants in the classroom, the Children's House is essentially a place where we live so many hours of our life. We want to, then it makes the room feel home-like, beautiful, colorful, fresh, and alive. Plant care is one of the quintessential care of environment activities. Children can dust the leaves, snip off the dead leaves, see the effects of over and underwatering. It's okay. When plants have outgrown their pot, children can help to repot them, examining the roots, the stem, the leaves, finding a new container with just the right drainage and a space with just the right light. And don't worry about whether or not you have a green thumb, which is more important is giving the children the opportunity to nurture and learn. And I'm going to put together, hopefully I'll have time, a list of non-toxic plants. You can easily Google it if I can't get that for you. Got some quotes coming in. Benny's in the classroom and he's often, this is from Jacob down in Burnsville. He says, Benny's in the classroom I'm most often working in, and he has added so much. The children have become engaged in his care and well-being. Oh, I love that. And Nikki says there's a program called Pets in the Classroom. They give grants to classroom animals. Oh, I love that so much. Those snails were in Nikki's room, by the way. And I think she also has some guinea pigs in there. You know, what I love is schools that want to have like one representation of each of the vertebrates, right? So have fish, birds, mammals, you know, what am I missing? Amphibians, and you guys know what I mean. And then the invertebrates, right? Like snails and different things like that. So having those examples are really, really exciting. And, you know, I was just talking to some toddler staff yesterday about how, you know, when she was working with Children's House and brought the children outside, and they were just, those children in particular were just ripping leaves off of plants, and like they didn't have that internalized deep respect for these living things that are plants, right? So this could be new for them. When we introduce something new like a pet or a plant, we want to have a small group lesson around that. How do we touch this plant? Just with one finger, right? Just with one finger. This is a living thing, just like we're living things. It needs water and light, just like we do, right? And want to like bring that just deep like reverence for nature into our children. And same with the pets, you know, how do we not scare our fish? How do we not scare Benny? You know, how do we really make them part of our family and feel included? Okay, I know these are dream bathrooms. I know these aren't our bathrooms, but I just wanted to say that remembering the bathroom is part of the prepared environment. Wouldn't this be a dream? Let's see what we can do to make our bathroom spaces as beautiful as possible. I'm so sorry we're over time. I'm just gonna quickly finish up here. So this is right outside, this Montessori school is about 3 blocks from my house, and right outside on their sidewalk, this isn't even inside their fence, they have these loose parts trays. And I just absolutely think it's amazing. Look at the broken bricks and pavers, you know. Could they drop it on their foot? They could, but we also show them how to carry heavy things, right? And how not to knock over heavy things onto our feet. And so, you know, the key is having them clean up everything before they go inside, keeping it organized. And I know we can do it. Again, that's about that investing the time in the children to show them how to do things. And here we are with some outdoor pictures, the outdoor classroom. Continue. This is not just a summer thing, my friends. Do this as far into the fall as you possibly can. Here we have Wood Park Burnsville. Here we have Step by Step Corcoran. Here we have Step by Step Maple Grove. Here we have Step by Step Wayzata. And here we have like 100 years ago in Italy. Look at that. Children doing the exact same thing, working outside. And I've got one more slide of this. Look at this. This is at Step by Step Plymouth. And this little friend here, she is doing the best thing ever. She is just contemplating life. She maybe isn't even thinking about anything at all. This is important work. We want to let children just be. They don't have to be working every single second. She is just chilling, and that is perfectly acceptable work. I love that. I love that picture so much. And lastly, the independence check-in. So when you walk into the room, is this room designed for your intended audience, which is the children? Does it feel inviting and manageable? Are the materials displayed on the shelves so as to entice and not overwhelm the child? The 3 to 5 year old children are roughly 3 to 4 feet tall. Are the cubbies and hooks, artwork, etc., hung at their level? Can a child, and this is really important, can a child develop and rely on their sense of order to find and access what they need throughout the day? Can they find all their materials, their cleaning supplies, the bathroom, water and snacks, a quiet space, pets and non-toxic plants that provide the opportunity to nurture living things? And so, okay, we talked about a lot of things. And for some people that could mean big changes. For some people, they're like, you know, thanks for the advice, but I think I'll keep it as is. And that's perfectly acceptable. But I just would love for you to think about it a little bit. Points for consideration. I would love if we could remove taped photos and labels and color coding tape on shelves, trays, and materials, right? So the pedagogical rationale, you know, we might think, oh, that helps the children know where to put things. but it actually takes away their opportunity to develop their sense of order, their memory. And we want it again to look cleaner and more home-like. You know, like I don't write on my glass kitchen. I just know that this goes in the kitchen, right? And so we want the children to have the opportunity to develop that. But what about the adults? We often have new staff. They don't know where things go. You could take photos and put them in a binder that you keep with the adult things that they can use to reference what a shelf looks like when it's completely full, right? Points for consideration: using shelves to create little classrooms for tables, chowkies, and mats. And the pedagogical rationale is it supports children in developing independence and concentration. What's the adult system? It's the old one up, one down, as Jana would say. And then spreading shelves and tables throughout the classwork instead of like clustered at the entrance. This supports independence, concentration, refinement of movement. It brings the workspaces to the materials, and most importantly, it allows for the freedom that we give them to work independently, that they don't have to all work in a cluster like that. So how do we navigate that, right? We need to know the children, invest in developing their care of self and care of the environment, so that they can not group together, so they can have lunch not all grouped together. And you can have the children move the tables and chairs onto the tile at lunchtime if you need more. If that is a thing that you really want to do, you can, but we want to prioritize the work time more than the lunch time. That's something that happens for 25 minutes a day. The work cycle is 3 hours long, right? We want to remove coloring sheets and worksheets and allow children to move along when they're ready for new skills. If we keep switching out worksheets and coloring sheets and the same transferring skills, they're not going to want to move along in their progression. So what are the adult systems to keep track of all this? It's observation, record keeping, and lesson planning. And that's just, really, really important. And then lastly, to be the most efficient next Thursday, there will be a lot of cutting projects. So I don't want you to feel the stress of bringing a bunch of unfinished projects back to your school. So bring as many paper cutters as possible. Bring them from school, bring them from home, borrow them from friends and relatives. Maybe check with the infant staff because they won't need them for their projects. Toddler staff will need their paper cutters, so we don't want to take their paper cutters. But you could literally, say you have 2 or 3 staff in your room, you could have one staff just cutting the whole time. We have 2 hours for material making. My friend Rebecca donated like 10 boxes of colored copy paper, all different colors, for you guys to cut and prep metal inset paper that should last you well into winter break. I'm not even sure how much, there's so much paper. So we can cut our metal inset paper. I have 3 reams of white paper. We can cut our writing papers. I've printed out like 200 copies of the lined paper, 200 copies of the quarter sheets, 200 pages of the half sheets, and 200 pages of the full sheet. So we'll divide those out amongst everybody, and cutting covers for all of those things. And then the other staff are working on cutting out the language cards and sewing the pouches. So there's, I just want you to sort of know ahead of time so you can really prepare yourself. Bring paper bags or totes to bring everything back to your school, because you're going to have a lot of cool stuff you're going to bring back with you. You'll have 4.5 hours in your room on Friday. I sent the agenda out to all the schools this week, so it should be posted in your staff rooms, which will let you know what's happening on Thursday and then also what's happening on Friday. 4.5 hours will go by so fast, but we have to do staff meetings in your schools. We have to do conscious discipline. And so that's going to take up some of that time. We're providing lunch and breakfast on those days so that you can just come and just really focus. And can you declutter ahead of time? So Corcoran, our lovely friends in Corcoran, are headed up by Miss Chelsea. Brenda, you may not know this yet, but you're part of this crew. We'll have a swap table at the Plymouth Community Center. So if you can clutter killer ahead of time and you have items that are in great condition, bring them along. You just, you're just ready to part with them for whatever reason, and other people can use them. Bring them to the staff or to the swap table. And then I need volunteers to bring in your favorite food work setups. I'd love to have a table full of ideas, complete with your mats or oilcloths and your aprons. So, and I have little labels for you to fill out that what is the name of the food work, and then your name in school, so that we know that this is a beautiful work that you're doing in your school. I really want people to feel empowered this year to go bravely into the world of food work and bravely into the world of sewing work. So sewing work is another work that I would love it if you would bring along your sewing setups if you have. Okay, and then thank you so very much. I appreciate your time. I know I've gone over. You all are just absolutely make my heart sing every single day. And I would love to stop the share here. And there's a new message. Oh, thank you, Judy. But anybody who wants to hang on and talk about anything is absolutely welcome. If you have any questions, feel free to use the hand raising or just unmute yourself, because I would really love to hear from you now. I just threw a lot of information at you, and I apologize for that. But I wanted to give it to you, like I said, ahead of time so you can make the most of your time on Friday. You only have 4.5 hours. So what can I answer for you? What questions can I answer for you? Or comments, anything that you have, ideas?
Hello?
Yes, Jacob.
So I was just curious, you sound like you know a lot about the layout of the classrooms and such, and how it should be like, just what is most acclimating to the engagement of the children in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I've been super curious about is I work at Wood Park in Burnsville,
Yes.
and I recently took a little trip to our sister location, Peaceful Valley in Golden Valley. And one
Yeah.
thing I was noticing was their layout of their shelves and such
Mm-hmm.
is a lot different. And there's not a lot of open space in their classroom. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
it is very like it all looks super intentional.
Yeah.
Like all of their shelves are more of there's not a lot of room for a child to like run around in circles and such, but
Mm-hmm.
also there's just there's everything looks super intentional. So I was wondering if like what your opinion is on if there should be more like closed corridors between the shelves,
Mm-hmm.
and just what the like spacing of shelves and what open space should look like in the classroom. I was wondering what your personal opinion is on that.
Yeah, and those are really, really astute observations. It's absolutely intentional to be that way, because we want children to navigate the space, have that refinement of their movement, right? That is something we want to provide them with the opportunity to do. We don't want them to be running around in the classroom, right? There's fragile things in there, and they can run around outside all that they want, but in the classroom, that's a different type of environment. And so it's set up in a different way, and that is super intentional. And I'm so glad that you noticed that. And I find that as long as there's enough floor space for children to have either a table or a working mat or a chowkey to work at, I don't think that there's any real such thing. As long as everything that's in there is 100% intentional, and we can have a rationale as to why it's there, then it is okay to have it feel pretty crowded. Not crowded, but it feels full, but intentionally full. So that's a really, really good observation that you had. And I would love to chat about this with you when I visit Burnsville, but I love that you visited Golden Valley, and they have got some beautiful classrooms there that are set up very intentionally. And you also have Miss Liz and Miss Erica there who you can talk with about this, but that it's absolutely intentional, and it's a really, really good observation. Yeah, thank you so much. Anybody else?
I have two questions for
Yes,
you.
Debbie.
So my first question would kind of be like, how would you suggest trying to like configure the room and teach the kids to like calmly be in that space when you have very few shelves? I know our school obviously was fortunate enough to get a grant and we are getting new materials, but like you've seen our class, we only have like 7 shelves, and one of them has to go where like a wall is missing, and like
Right.
some of our other toddler rooms don't have very many shelves, and just like, so how would you like us to go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're totally right. So Wood Park Savage, Wood Park Burnsville, Eden Prairie, Peaceful Valley, and Corcoran and Chaska Step by Steps got they're the final 5 schools to get the grants. And but what we will actually be spending a lot of that money on is tables and chairs for those schools. And so it's going to be a process of purchasing the shelves over time, because you're absolutely right. You do need more shelves down there. And as the teachers in those schools get their Montessori training, a commitment that Endeavor has made is to have a full set of materials. So that will happen more and more as more people get their training in Wood Park Savage. So I want you to know that that is on the way. But again, it's going to be one of those things where it's going to take time, patience, money, all those things that we don't have a lot of, but we want to have a lot of, but that's what it's going to take. But you're absolutely right. That's a great observation. We definitely need more shelves in Savage. Mhm.
My other question I had was about nap time.
Yeah.
So the kids in me and Miss Michaela's class really struggle with the transition from like eating to washing up to washing their dishes and then going to the bathroom and then laying down. Like
Mhm.
we talked to our school leaders about getting lunch earlier, but the kids really struggle with the all laying down so that they all have like this hush calm for like 30 minutes so that they
Mhm.
can really like have that time to calm their body instead of one kid's like laying down at this time and another kid's laying down 30 minutes later. Like, do you have advice on how we can get them more similarly all on the same page? Because you can only have so many kids, obviously, using the bathroom, washing their dishes, like that kind of thing at the same time. And all of our children wait to eat together until everyone's had their food.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. So one of the things that, and anybody else wants to chime in about that, because this is certainly not unique to Savage, but one of the things that I would suggest is that you know which children you have some that'll fall asleep easily, some that'll fall asleep, it'll take a little bit more for them, right? And so I would be very strategic. And this is where you know your children really well. Start with the ones that you know are going to fall asleep easily, right? And if you have the 2 staff in the room, have one staff minding the bathroom and one staff minding the start to the nap time. And dim the lights. I know you've got the challenge of your room doesn't have walls. It doesn't really have walls, so
No
that's a
walls and,
problem.
like, windows.
And huge windows, which are a blessing in one way and challenging at nap time, right? So let's find ways to have blackout curtains coming. Let's talk to Sarah about that, if we can find ways to make it darker in there. But you do have that open wall space, so we need to figure out some environmental changes for that room so that we can support it. But definitely start with the children that you know will fall asleep most easily. And you dim the lights the best you can. You put on the very soft music that indicates to the children that this is a time, even if you're still waiting to use the bathroom, even if you're still washing your dishes, it starts to calm down. And you can say, look at our friends who are sleeping. We are part of a community. We need to support them in their sleep. And that starts to just automatically, if they're doing it for somebody else, children have big hearts, right? They want to support each other and they love each other. And they know that it's hard to sleep when everybody's being rambunctious. So what can we do as a community to support our sleeping friends, right? And then it just sort of does it in waves. It's really hard to do everything all at once, right? You can't, it's just not possible.
Mhm.
So once they're, I would move those children through the process, the ones that fall asleep the fastest, and then progress from there. Give that a try and see how it goes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? I'll wait on as long as possible as you guys need me, and you can hop off when you're done, but I'll wait on as long as you want. Emily.
Yeah. So one thing with that, that Gabby was talking about is one thing I think I talked about the last in a PD day was for us in the toddler, I'm in the toddler classroom full time right now. So that's where my reference is in my head. So not Children's House, but we do we kind of all have that moment where we're together. We do our wish, and then we slowly have them go wash their hands for lunch. Once again, toddler classroom instead of Children's House, but they're washing their hands before lunch, and then that way they can sit down and eat slowly. Like there's one child who takes 45 minutes to eat lunch. She goes first, and she can sit down for as long as she needs, and she's the last one to clean up, but she doesn't have to wait for everybody else to be washing, because it does take that long time. And then the more you can have them transition to washing hands and eating lunch when they're ready and then cleaning up when they're ready, it makes it flow a little bit easier. So it's not everybody doing the same thing right away. So maybe that's something you can start having where it's more of a flow as opposed to like an order, like such like a sequence right away.
Yeah, Emily, that's really great. I mean, that is how we approach our, we don't expect them to all start reading at the same time, right? We don't expect them all to do anything at the same time. So eating lunch and falling asleep is the same sort of thing. And it's about knowing your children really well and doing it in a way that supports the individual child And it takes a lot of stress off of the adults too, when you're not trying to get everyone to do everything all at the exact same time. So, and it does stretch it out a little bit, but that's okay, because some of the older children, they may not need quite as much sleep as some of the younger children, or just it's an individual thing. So thank you so much, Emily. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, I feel like if you can have the friends that either need longer to eat or who are very tired, you can get them to their meal faster, and then they can lay down faster, and then it just kind of evens out. I mean, we don't go to sleep until a little bit later, but it is calmer generally. But
Yeah.
And then I do have one question as well.
Yeah.
So as I'm in the toddler mindset, I'm thinking about how some of this can be applied to a toddler classroom. And obviously it's not quite the same, but I was thinking, is this type of a meeting something that is a possibility to do for toddler communities in the future? I know that there are a lot of our infant and toddler staff at Peaceful Valley, Golden Valley are looking to have more of this input on how to arrange classrooms in a way for toddlers and infants. And I thought this was a very informative, well put together thing. I think it could really add a lot of value to those communities as they're really working towards those next steps and making the classrooms even more well put together. Is this something that you're potentially looking for in the future of doing for younger classrooms?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. So, at the PD Day, we're going to be talking a lot about the environment as a teacher, and that's going to be to everyone. So there's going to be some general philosophies that are going to be shared with everybody that apply to all of the classrooms. But more specifically for infants and toddlers, that is actually on my to-do list by winter break, is to make a RISE training, and I would do it live as well, like this, because I really like the live aspect of it, to build the community and be able to ask questions in this way. So that is something that Jana and Dr. Amy have asked me to do since I did my 0 to 3 training last summer. And I'm more than happy to do it, but I would love for everyone to go through the academic orientation first. If the staff haven't done that, please do so. That gives a lot of pieces of it. And then we're talking about the environment as a teacher at the professional development day. That'll have more pieces of it. And then more specifically infant and toddler, because it's nice, as we say in Montessori, to go from the whole to the parts, right? So we want to start with the big picture and then break it down even further to the specifics and the nitty gritties of the classroom. And so that's, where these kinds of Zooms come in. But yeah, thank you so much. Nikki, did you have something? I see your hand is raised.
Well, I just had something to maybe add about the dishes in the bathroom and stuff. Because I won't say recent, it's been probably 6 or 7 months of a thing. And today, ironically, I stood there and I was like, by golly, I think we might have it. I mean, I'm going to introduce plates next. So, bear with me. But I was going to say some things that we found helpful, and it just takes time. But we, I don't know how you'll feel about this, but we have 2 friends washing dishes at a time, because with 30 friends, it can get a lot. And then we started by excusing littles, as we refer to them, the younger friends first, because they take a little while. Plus, we kind of need to be right there. And then they are the ones who are also the nappers typically. So they need to go into the bathroom. And we have a routine. At first it was very specific. I would either say, throw away your plate and bring your chair and go potty. Or I would say, please wash your cup and spoon. And now I can just say, you're welcome to take care of your spot. But so we kind of have that. My friends, not all my friends nap. So I have about 10 friends who don't nap every day. So they clean up their spots. They're also usually more experienced. And so they might also help do some extra cleanup that some of our littles are still working on. And then as the littles come in, they kind of meander to their cots. It's not quiet yet. And then I do a chapter book, which I know a lot of people do, but that is actually the really great calming piece. And it's really surprising how much the little ones do get out of it. We're reading Trumpet of the Swan right now, and signet is our favorite new word. And so that has been just amazing. And I've seen Christy always read at Step by Step. Miss Melissa always reads. And so it's something that was really important to me. And I think that's been a super grounding piece. And as a bonus, parents love it. And so it's just like this another, and I'll update parents on what's happening in our story so that they can talk about it with their kids. And that it's been really great. So I would just, like you said, start with the whole and just be really intentional about maybe starting with the younger friends first. And then you're kind of, you are kind of telling them where to go at first. But today, we didn't have a backup in the bathroom. We didn't have a backup at the sink. Everybody did great. So, it doesn't mean that we're still not reminding friends to we use a sponge when we're washing, not dumping water back and forth. But it was kind of amazing. So just like hang in there. It'll
That's
be worth it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Nikki.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank
That's
you.
fabulous.
The kids are reading Magic Treehouse right now is the book we're
Ah.
reading them, but
House
Yeah.
has just spawned so many studies or special studies, we like to call them. I mean, we deep dived into Egypt once. Like, love a Magic Treehouse.
oh yeah, Magic Treehouse is my jam. It was my jam as a kid. It still is. Like, good books. They definitely like them a lot. I will definitely take all your guys' advice. Don't know how well the not eating all together, not getting up all together will work because it's not me. They all wait for the teachers to say, I wasn't there one day and they wouldn't eat until the substitute teachers told them that they may enjoy. They wouldn't get up till all of their friends at their table were done. I think it's the older kids' way of trying to help them or something.
Sure.
But that's none of the other classes do it. It's just something they do, but I will definitely try it. So
Well,
I do
that's-
appreciate all the advice.
You
It's
betcha.
their
Well,
odd quirk that they have.
yeah. And, at the Professional Development Day, we're going to learn about a strategy for incremental change, of making tiny changes that make big differences. So that's going to be a focus of the first major presentation of the morning. So I'm super excited about that. Nicole, hi.
Hi.
Something? Yeah.
So our new director said the kids were not allowed to wash dishes because it was unsanitary. So they can wash the dishes.
They can absolutely wash the dishes, and I'll talk with her. She's new to Montessori, so she's, there's Montessori can feel really uncomfortable for people when they don't know and they haven't been exposed to it and they haven't seen. So we're gonna, have whenever there's things like that come up, definitely let us know, and we'll help Olga, because she's, like I said, she's fresh to Montessori. So there's a lot of learning that goes on, and that's absolutely fine. But yeah, definitely the children can wash, they do the soapy water and the clear water part of it. And then the adults must sanitize. So that
Okay.
step by the adults is really important. That obviously has to happen too. But by the time the dishes get to the adults' hands, they shouldn't have, crusties and things. The adults will give them a once over, and make sure that there isn't any actual food left on it. And then all the adults have to do is do the bleach plunge and let them air dry. And then, and that's it. So it's just as long as the 3-step process is happening, but the children are doing the first 2 steps. Does that make sense?
Yep. So we would
Yeah.
just bring it in the kitchen and do the bleach on our own. Okay.
Yep. Emily, how do you do it at Golden Valley? Do you want to share with Nicole?
Yeah, so in the toddler classroom, actually today was the very first day that I showed them how to do some washing. But yeah, I think that in the Children's House classrooms, Melissa's on here too, so she might be able to share more about Children's House. But yeah, they do the soapy water, they do the rinse water, and then we bring it in. And once again, in toddlers, I rewash all the dishes. But it is what it is. But getting them to the point where they're just, today we just had them dip and pretty much just dip and then put in a different thing. But we have the 3 compartments. I have the dishwashing thing where it has the soap, the rinse, and then I just have a bucket on the side with a towel over it, and I just have them put all of their dishes into those wash tubs, and then I bring the wash tubs to the kitchen and I do it there. I don't know, Melissa, if you want to step in and talk about it too, if you have it any other way.
We do. We dismiss as the children are finishing eating, they're able to then go to our wash stand and they wash. We showed them, step by step. We started with just the one utensil. Then we added the cups, and now they're doing all three. They're doing their plates, their cups, and their utensils. We show them how to use the scrub brush first to scrub off all the extra food that didn't come off into the trash can. And then they use the sponge to wash first the plate. They drip it, let it all drip off. It moves in then to the rinse water. They go back to the soapy water. They wash their fork and their cup, and they go back in, and then we show them it's not a plain source. That's for outside at the water table. But then they put it into the dry rack. And once that goes in there, then they're able to dry their hands, and they move on to the bathroom to use the bathroom before rest time. So it's working beautifully. Our youngest friends, we've had one plate break this week, and his heart just broke, but it's working out really well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. That's excellent. Anyone else have any questions or comments? We've got the hive mind here. So if anyone has anything, there's lots of experience in this call I see right here. Well, I appreciate your time. It is 8 o'clock at night. It's 9 o'clock where Judy is. My goodness. Thank you so much for hanging in there with us, Judy. It was so special having you on the call with us. And time to say goodnight. So thank you all, and I'll see you next Thursday. Bring the paper cutters. Bring them, lots of them. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you all.